All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of our Lean Startup Co. webinar series. My name is Ben Hafley, and I'm the Managing Director here at Lean Startup Co. Today, we're really excited to speak with you about our topic of generating quick wins. And so if we go to the next slide, the reason that we're excited about this topic, unlocking innovation success one quick win at a time, is that it's come up a lot over the last kind of 6 to 10 months in our interactions with our existing clients, our network of innovation and product development specialists, a lot of the speaking engagements that we do, our work at conferences. This has been a constant theme that comes up. And we love this question because if someone's asking, how do I generate quick wins in the innovation space? It means that they're in it for the right reason. So it means that you're not interested in innovation theater or just playing innovation. You want to get down to results and have the rubber meet the road. So we're really excited that you decided to join us today and dive into this super critical topic. So on to the next. One of the questions I like to get out of the way right up front is, how do we know all this stuff that we're about to share with you? And it's because over the last 10 years, we've worked with hundreds of client organizations and thousands of teams at those client organizations to implement Lean Startup. And so we know what works and what doesn't work. And our three core service offerings are our introductory workshops, where we offer training for both teams and their executives on Lean Startup fundamentals so they can go out and start vetting, shaping, and de-risking new business opportunities. We also have our pilot programs where we're doing both training and coaching. And that's over a sprint, a Lean Startup sprint, typically between kind of 10 and 15 weeks. And that culminates in a pivot, persevere, or kill recommendation and decision. And that's back to kind of, how do you learn Lean Startup? You learn by doing, right? I want to flag the word pilot here because we're going to get to why we call it that at Lean Startup Co. and how you can use that same framing to affect change within your company. And then last but certainly not least, our custom framework design and implementation work. This is typically with bigger companies who say, look, I've got an innovation framework or product development framework that's not working, or I don't have one at all. And I'd like to get some support in building an innovation or product development framework that's based on Lean Startup principles. And then we help them to implement that using training and coaching. So that's a little bit about how we know what we're about to share. And I want to tell you a little bit about our team next. So we are Eric Ries's own team for implementing Lean Startup. Eric Ries, of course, is the author of the Lean Startup, the Startup Way, and the Leader's Guide, and is behind the international Lean Startup movement. And so our clients really appreciate the fact that they can come direct to the source in working with us at Lean Startup Co., as opposed to working with somebody that maybe has second or third hand knowledge about how all this works. So today, you're going to be speaking with just three of us, myself, again, Ben Hafley, Managing Director, and our Senior Director, Jonathan Bertfield, and our Senior Associate, Marissa Homan. So I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Excited to be with this group today and looking forward to having a really robust conversation. We're going to have that conversation through Menti, which is a platform that allows us to hear from you in response to various questions and quizzes that we'll throw up. So if you haven't already done so, please pick up your phone, scan this QR code, or go to this URL and enter the code. We'll show this code on multiple slides, so you'll be able to get back to this, but we'll be switching back and forth. So when we're asking you to respond, pick up your phone and look at it. When we're talking and showing the results and presenting other content, we'll be back onto the Zoom screen. So kind of jumping back and forth between those two modes will keep us focused. All right, so I'm going to assume everyone's gone up there. Let's have a quick little test out of how Menti is working. So let's assume you've got a blank check. Where are you traveling to this weekend? So on your phone, you should be able to move the small blue dot and press submit, and you can pick a location around the world. No restrictions. Where are you going? All right, good dispersion happening.
Nice.
Lots of people heading to the Mediterranean. I see a few there. It's exciting for you. I would say be cautious of going to the Mediterranean this weekend. Lots of fires and lots of high heat, but have fun when you're there is all I'm saying. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and some people electing to go farther north. So we've got an Alaska and a Greenland. That's good. That's good. It's smart given the current environment.
Greenland. I see Iceland doesn't even make it onto this map, by the way. So if you chose Greenland because you thought you'd go to Iceland, like that
Didn't
could
make the
also
cut.
be,
Yeah.
didn't make the cut. It's okay. Good. All right. Well, this is a good indication that A, you're paying attention, and B, you're getting used to using Menti. So thanks for sharing that. And we'll see if we can meet any of you on your weekend holidays. I'm not providing the blank check, by the way. It's just a thought exercise in case anyone was confused by that. All right. So let's dig in. So we're going to start off by thinking about what are some of the ways that we can roll out lean startup methodology inside of a large organization. This whole conversation we have today is grounded in that question. And so we're going to start thinking about what are some of the ways that we might do that. So we've got a couple of scenarios that you'll see on the next screen. So for the moment, stay focused on the Zoom, and then we'll switch over to Menti. But digest these two different paths, and we see these paths on a regular basis. Sometimes we're able to get in there before this decision is made, sometimes it's afterwards, but either way, these are common patterns that we see for companies. They're going to be represented here by two fictional companies, Fruit Inc. and Veggie Inc., who we don't work with, but maybe one day we will. So digest what is going to be on the screen, and then we're going to ask you to think which is the better choice for rolling out lean startup. All right. Maybe if you want to, on your phone, click the thumbs up and let us know that you've digested when you feel like you're in a good place there. Great. And you can do that at any point in time. There's a couple of different options that will show up. Let's see where we're up to. So a dozen or so. That's probably a good sign. All right. So let's respond then. What do you think? Which of these companies chose the better path, Fruit Inc. or Veggie Inc.? So again, pick up your phone, vote on the better choice here. Nice. Great. So balancing out nicely at the 80-20 rule. That's always a good place to be. I'm happy to see that there's a mix here, right? Because there's not necessarily the right path. I don't know if there's any comments coming through about these choices, but I would say Fruit Inc. for us is not the ideal choice, right? For us, there's a variety of reasons why Veggie Inc. Is, and we're in agreement with the 81% of folks here. So let's unpack why we think that might be. So on the next screen, we'll give you an opportunity to comment on what are the reasons why you think Veggie Inc. might be the better choice. So again, those folks, you can comment on this regardless of what you voted on the previous screen. So we'll see some of those responses showing up here. Why is Veggie Inc. the better choice? Great. Yeah, these are awesome.
You're really good.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and start commenting on these. while everyone else is completing the answers, we'll get these to scroll up so you can see some of the ideas. I'm loving getting started is important, right? Like the obvious phrase here, you know, perfect is the enemy of good, right? Even if we're wrong, establishing that early momentum within the organization to find out is super powerful for rolling out any change initiative, really, but especially one as substantial as thinking about lean startup methods and mindset. So there's that initial getting the boat moving, super powerful. Validate quickly, another really important one. We want to learn before we go too big. So in some ways, we're treating the change much like our product. So we're running cycles of fast learning to get that validation, super powerful. Early adopters, we're going to talk about those a lot through the course of this session. Who are they? How do we find them? Why are they important? But we want to learn from those individuals and teams and leaders across our organization who are most challenged by the lack of a process and a methodology like Lean Startup. They're going to teach us a huge amount, which will then be able to play out as we expand and move further across the organization. Ben, see any here that you want to pick out?
Yeah, no, these are really good, and I think there's some of the root causes that are behind some of these concepts are, for example, the fact that you know, senior leadership wants to see some results. They want to see some wins. They want to see some proof points. And if you take the all-in approach, that can get really messy given the size of the investment. And so, kind of doing a smaller pilot upfront that's more likely to generate those quick wins is smarter, because then you can say, look what we did for this small amount of investment. Now we'd like another round of investment for this program. So that's a big part of it. In addition, I guess one more thing would be the fact that for any new approach to innovation or product development, there's a runway, just like a runway for a startup, right? You have limited time to prove that something works, and if you're going all in as Fruit Inc. did, then you're really putting all your eggs in one basket and hoping that you got it right. And so taking a more metered approach, right? And we'll talk about what that means and add some language to solidify that here in just a minute. But taking that more metered approach is a much smarter investment because it'll help you extend your runway by providing proof points and quick wins, as opposed to just saying, hey, trust us, this is going to be great. I think that's behind a lot of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. All right, this is good stuff. Let's keep going. We're going to pull back and kind of focus in on some of these as we keep going. So thanks for sharing. Let's keep that contribution going. So Ben, you want to talk about how we think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've seen some of our webinars before, we often talk about the convince do loop. It's especially important given the context of quick wins. And so this is our convince do loop up at the top, and then just the general adoption curve on the bottom here. So let's talk about this through a story. So about 3 years ago, I was supporting a VP at a well-known brand in the US, and she said, I'm really excited about using Lean Startup. And I'm excited to get started, but I need to go and talk to my leadership team and make sure everybody's bought in. So 2 weeks later, we had another call, and she said, hey, I talked to my 8 people on my leadership team. 5 of them think that this is really good. There's 2 that are kind of asking why we're doing this, and 1 that's almost hostile to the idea, but that's okay. I'm still really confident that, we've got enough buy-in to go and do Lean Startup. But before I do that, I really want to talk to the other division leaders at my company and make sure they're aware of what we're doing and make sure they're bought in. So I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later. Well, not everybody was bought in the other divisions, and there was actually some more hostility that I detected. So I'm not as confident now that we're gonna be able to deploy Lean Startup. But now I'm going to go talk to some of the functional areas like sales and marketing and finance and really make sure they're bought in. So I won't continue the story. You know where I'm going. There was so much convincing that had to take place that nothing ever got done. She never got to start using Lean Startup. And so the convince do loop was born out of this that story and many others like it, where let's just admit the fact that the internal adoption curve exists. And what we mean by that is, just like outside of your company for your products and services, there's an adoption curve. There's also one internally. And so what that executive was trying to do was attack the entire adoption curve at her company all at once. And that's just kind of fighting against human nature. So let's not do that. And so what we've seen work much more effectively and repeatably is to do just enough convincing up front to say, hey, let's get some innovators and some early adopters who say, yeah, I'd really like to try Lean Startup as an approach. Convince just those leaders, just those teams to pilot it. Remember, I said I was going to tie back pilot, deliberate. It's because we're not deciding that we're going all in on this. We're deciding to try it out and see if it earns its keep. And so let's convince a small cohort of teams to try it out. And then the doing is actually what does most of the convincing. So that link between doing and convincing, the bottom arrow, is the most important one. When you run a Lean Startup sprint with a cohort of teams that are piloting it, they produce quick wins. They produce proof points. They do things faster. They make pivot recommendations. They decide to kill something, which a lot of companies didn't even know they could do that, right? They decide to kill initiatives. And so we'll talk about what some of those proof points are, but those proof points come out, and that earns the right to invite the next group on the adoption curve to participate, right, in rolling out Lean Startup. And so we call this, and this is a big idea, the difference between the forced faith model and the earned faith model. Forced faith is, let's go out and convince everyone on the adoption curve internally that this is great. Doesn't tend to work very well, right? And that's what Fruit Inc. was doing. The opposite of that is, let's go out and just start with early adopters and then earn the faith of the rest of the adoption curve. And so that's a big idea that's underpinning a lot of the things we'll be talking about today. So just in order to kind of highlight that, we work with, like I said, a lot of different clients. And so this is a quote from Tom Harris at MasterCard, Senior Vice President for Product Lifecycle Management. And when we asked him, what are the top things that are important when you're affecting this kind of change, he said it's all about getting those points on the board, and it energizes your teams and builds belief. That's back to the faith, right? The earned faith that a better future lies ahead. So it's a big concept, and hopefully you can use this at your organization. So I'll hand it back over to Jonathan to cover the next one.
Great. So that quote from Tom Harris, he talked about getting points on the board, right? It's another language set for the quick wins. We can also talk about them as proof points. We've got a couple of other ideas for how we talk about those, but they're super powerful for generating that excitement. So to build on the adoption curve paradigm that some of you are probably familiar with, establishing that beachhead, right? To using Ben's language there, it has to be earned, right? And so we have to win those moments so that we can get credibility with the rest of the organization and build on that momentum. So a few different ideas are going to come through as we respond here, but what are some of your examples? What are some of the great proof points you've seen or you anticipate trying to generate in your organization? So give you a few minutes to respond to that. Looking at your phones, you should be able to fill in as many responses as you want, actually.
Off to a great start here. This is these three are really powerful. Yep.
And Islam, I see your question in the Q&A about a real example. Yes, we're going to get some real examples in a moment, but hold us accountable. If you don't hear what you were looking for, push us, but yeah, we're going to get there. Yeah, these are some great responses here. So liking early adopter success stories, we're going to talk about some examples of those in a moment. Same with case studies, testimonials, super powerful. Understanding the customer to the T, that's an interesting one, right? Especially in an organization which really doesn't understand its customers. So starting to understand and have empathy for and understand the challenges and success goals of customers, that can be super powerful. How do we get there? We use the method and it's repeatable. So I love that one. This is an interesting one. Not getting positive feedback from prospective early adopters. It's often so surprising, right? A team is, hey, we're really excited about this opportunity. We think this is going to be like the next big billion-dollar opportunity for our organization. And then we start talking to people and crickets, right? Like that's a powerful proof point that, A, we're doing it right. We're finding out before we go down that path of assuming that we were correct, we've learned, therefore we're about to save a ton of money by not going after that or shifting our focus and pivoting to a new strategy.
Yep. And, you know, just in our work, a lot of the, more than you'd think, a lot of the wins out there are shutting down ideas that are losers, you know, innovation or product initiatives that just aren't going to work, but having evidence to do it. So it's no longer a political process or a political decision. It's just, hey, we looked at the evidence and we think we should invest in something that's got a higher potential ROI. I did want to focus on the sales that move stock price. Obviously, that is the ultimate powerful proof point. I think the issue with a lot of innovation and product development teams is we're not ready to sell anything yet. And how do we show progress? How do we show proof points and generate quick wins pre-revenue? And I know that, you know, just looking at the names online, I know a lot of you in that space right now. So yes to sales, that's the ultimate one, but also how do we generate proof points and quick wins even before that as leading indicators of future sales? It's a big idea.
Yeah, a lot of these are ticking that box of leading indicators early in the journey, because what we're talking about here is the approach that we're using generating value for the organization, right? So when we're on our lean startup journey and we're deploying a new methodology, the goal isn't say we've deployed lean startup. The goal is to deliver impact and value in the organization. And sure, we want to get to stock price going in the right direction. That's going to take a while. What do we do before we get there? What do we do when we haven't got those customers and the revenue? So some of these ideas we're going to unpack now, because these are really on point for the kinds of things that we want to talk about. So let's really get into a couple of different ways of framing this. So the first way of framing some of those wins is to think about them in the context of the process, right? Meaning, how is the rollout of our new methodology of lean startup, how's that working? What is it translating to? How can we quantify the value in a way that is, again, a leading indicator of we've got this awesome process in place and everybody is using it and we've got a fantastic new business as usual approach. So rapid learning velocity, right? We can see that we're learning faster than we have previously. That's a powerful win that is subtle, right? Because learnings, they're a little bit ephemeral, they're a little bit hard to grasp, right? But they're super important as the fuel that is powering our journey. Kill decisions. This is a critical one, and I'll expand on it with a story from one of our clients in the financial services space. They were rolling out growth boards and the cycle of product teams presenting recommendations to growth boards and getting decisions made really quickly so that funding can be deployed. And traditionally, this organization had a really, really poor, but kind of not really well understood dynamic of never saying no. right? Things just didn't ever get stopped. And so what we started to do when we're rolling out growth boards was tracking all the decisions. And we created a dashboard, which allowed us to communicate, you know what, of the decisions we've made, we're actually only at about 3 to 4% that are stop decisions or kill decisions. And we can reflect on that and say, well, is that the right percentage? And it turns out that that wasn't, because what was happening was the growth board were being way too conservative. They were kind of always comfortable saying yes. And the teams were only presenting opportunities that were sure of getting a green light, right? So if the strategy was, let's innovate, let's find adjacent opportunities, let's expand to new markets or new customers, then always having opportunities that we're really comfortable with isn't a good signal of progress. So that was a massive process win, because we were able to say we're learning what we're doing right and what we're not doing right. Clear innovation strategy in place. Again, the fact that we can build an innovation strategy has huge impact downstream for what teams are going to be working on and how effective we are at making decisions. So getting that in place is a big process win. And just making clear decisions that are concise at the meeting, that are transparent to the various teams. All of those things start to build up and understanding this process is working. So how can we track them, articulate them, and improve on them? I'll hand over to Marissa if you want to jump in and talk about another category of wins.
Absolutely. So our product wins are the outcomes from tackling our product unknowns or uncertainties. And these wins provide teams, leadership, and stakeholders with the confidence and the evidence to be able to make a decision if the project is worthy of their time and continued investment. So our common product wins come from building that strength of evidence or those leading indicators of a sale. So before we have revenue, and then from this data, validating or invalidating the opportunity to the point that we can make the recommendation if the product is a viable opportunity and that it aligns with the company's strategic vision or not. So some of these leading indicators of a sale you can see on the screen, such as letters of intent and trial signups. These are strong indicators of a customer's level of interest and provide executives with the data to be able to make the pivot, persevere, or kill recommendation for a project's continuation. So if the project cannot generate a high strength of evidence or validate customer desirability, then resources should be reallocated to another project in the backlog. That is a huge product win. The decision that a product can validate or reach a high level of indication is a major win. And it saves us a large amount of resources that we would have spent in executing a dud. So I'm going to share an example from one of the clients that I worked with in the manufacturing space. So the team was working on how to enhance the experience inside of one of their vehicles to be more customizable. Competitors were coming out with features that seemed to be so innovative and tech focused, and they wanted to keep up. So they learned quickly in less than 10 weeks through rapidly speaking with end users and utilizing low fidelity MVPs, such as a landing page, and generating these leading indicators of a sale, even up to a letter of intent, that some of the features they thought to be a high priority to users and these features that competitors were coming out with were actually not regarded as a value add at all. So in this case, the quick win was it was a pivot decision. They figured out which features they didn't have to waste time, money, and energy executing on and pivoted to the features that were important. Another example from a client I worked with in the entertainment and broadcasting industry, the team was looking to create new value and thanking viewers for watching live broadcasts and attending live events, as opposed to the ever popular, streaming services that we all use. So within a few weeks, the team found and validated 2 customer desires and problems. 1, that customers wanted to be rewarded for their avid viewership, and 2, that they wanted to share their experiences with others. So again, within a few weeks, the team was able to discover and test multiple solution concepts, and they learned that although there was a problem to be solved, it was not a viable opportunity for their company, and it didn't fit in with their strategic vision for 2023. So this is what we call a success type 2, because it's not, the problem is not worthy of being solved. The problem is not right to be solved by the company. So this is a major product win for the team and the stakeholders, and they reallocated their resources to something else. Once again, all learned within 6 months. So Jonathan,
Awesome.
I will hand it back over to you.
Ben, you want to pick this one up?
Sure. And so I guess, we've talked about the importance of quick wins. We've talked about what quick wins are. Let's talk a little bit then about why quick wins are important. We're framing it through a different lens here. It's always important to start with why, right? So why are quick wins important? Let's go ahead and respond. Yeah.
These are great.
These are great. Yeah, I love don't waste money. In fact, this is a lean way of moving through the adoption curve, identifying those quick wins rather than ask people to just trust that it's going to be great a couple of years from now. Yeah, it's really good. I like C-suite confidence is good. I think one of the things that I'll share is that, especially for a larger organization, you might not need to get the C-suite involved. It depends. Maybe you're just doing it at maybe the convince do loop is first done at the division, maybe even the department level, depending on how your organization is structured. So it need not start with a C-suite. They might be at in the middle of the adoption curve or later on after you've generated some of those proof points.
I'll pick up on this boost morale that was early in the list. It really is important to recognize that when you're driving change, there are humans who are at the center of that change, and not everyone reacts to the disruption, to the uncertainty in the same way, right? And so getting these small wins in place where we're seeing kind of new data showing progress, where we're seeing these stories emerge, they're really important for giving those who are a little bit cynical maybe, or a little bit unmotivated, the momentum to really kind of charge forward, because they're not fighting the fight on their own. They're seeing they're part of something larger. And it really does boost morale to see those quick wins showing up to keep the energy going.
Yep. It's great. I think also demonstrates traction. Again, it's just like thinking of your introducing a new way of working like Lean Startup, thinking of it as a startup itself. So introducing traction as a startup out in the market, you'd be trying to demonstrate traction with customers. You're really doing the same thing within your organization to introduce Lean Startup at your organization. So I like that kind of analogy with a startup. And I really like risk. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I really like risk mitigation as well, because really what we're doing is we're applying lean concepts, right, to rolling out a new way of working. So we're applying lean to lean. And in this case, risk mitigation, there's an incredible amount of risk of going all in on something new. And it's precisely because of that adoption curve. And it costs a lot of money. And any proof points that you do get in going after the entire internal adoption curve are likely to be drowned out by what I call drama points, right? So those are the late majority and the laggards who are kind of kicking and screaming that they don't want to do this. Some of your quick wins might get drowned out by those later people. And so one of the things that's really important is the rest of the adoption curve that's not up front, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not bad people. They're just not ready. And those of us from Lean Startup Co. That are on this call, we're late majorities and laggards on many different things, right? Because we want to see we want to see it work whether it's a new phone or a new car technology, whatever it is. So there's nothing wrong with being on the right side of the adoption curve. But we want to start in the beginning because it minimizes the risk and increases the odds of the adoption actually happening in its entirety. So it's a big concept of the reason we're doing this is it lowers risk. That's the whole point. So I really like that.
Yeah, I'll just chime in on this one. I like the way it was phrased. Convinces the organization you're actually working.
Yeah.
One of the things that often happens, especially with innovation, but also with product development teams, when they're working on initiatives that are not yet revenue generating or don't yet have customers, it's very easy for others in the organization to say, well, they're just messing around over there. They're not actually doing real work. They're not doing important work. They're not strategically aligned. So the quicker you can get some of these quick wins shared, posted, whether that's the examples that we talked about before in terms of the metrics, in terms of the case studies, they're really powerful at avoiding negative inertia of being established in other parts of the organization that are going to kind of come and knock back the progress that you are actually making. So it's a really important tactic for communicating there is some real progress going on here. So I love that you called that out, whoever added that one. It's really so important. Great. Love this stuff. Keep coming and ask any questions in the Q&A if you have them. Let's go on to the next section. So great, we've got an understanding of the importance of quick wins. We've got an understanding of what they might look like and how we might use them. The big challenge, of course, is, well, how do we generate them? Where did these come from? They're not going to fall out of the sky just because we started working on this process. So if you can just pick up your phones again and add some responses for what have you seen as your best tactic for generating quick wins? Or what do you anticipate, given how your organization works, your culture, and your process, what might be good ways for generating them? And we're going to go into and uncover some real examples after this. So it'd be great to get some inputs into that. Interesting. That's a good hack, that last one. So one we're going to get into in a moment, the handpicked teams and topics. That's going to be an important idea. We'll expand on that one. Finding achievable milestones. That's a really big concept in rolling out Lean Startup, is really thinking about what are the right milestones? How can we understand what is the problem and what is the solution, etc., rather than saying our only milestone is launching into market or getting revenue. So we want to find leading indicators towards that. So identifying that path, systematizing it, and talking about it, reporting it out, super powerful.
I'll pick up on the right intel and then utilize an idea where a new team member has already completed significant diligence. So there's a good ideas. We always at Lean Startup Co. like to differentiate between analysis and evidence. And so starting out with analysis of market sizing and making sure that it's a strategic fit, to go back to the bottom left comment here on it's aligned to something that's the strategic value chain. All really important in making sure that you're working on the right thing in the first place. But there's there is, so those are good ways of hacking kind of the beginning part, but then there's no substitute for evidence, meaning, hey, we know that this AI initiative is aligned with our strategy and it's a really hot topic right now. But you got to go beyond analysis and move into evidence, meaning, do we have evidence of traction with our specific solution, with our specific business model, that this is going to work? So, but I agree that having the right intel and analysis and strategic alignment up front is a great way of making sure that you're working on something that has a chance of being implemented if you end up vetting a viable business opportunity.
Let's dig into some real examples that we see as kind of powerful tactics for generating those quick wins. So Ben, why don't you take the first one?
Yeah, and I think, we've covered this in one way or another, but just to kind of solidify it in one concept is finding those early adopter teams at the beginning of the adoption curve, and then running rapid convince do loops. And so how do you identify early adopter teams? A common metric that we've seen, or a common tactic rather, is to do an intro session to Lean Startup and say, hey, this is what Lean Startup is. Here's the use case. And we're looking for pilot teams that are interested in joining our pilot cohort, right? 3 to 6 teams, not the whole company. And so that's a powerful way to have those early adopter teams and leaders self-identify and say, hey, I'm interested in giving this a shot. So that's a concrete tactic for doing that. The other thing is the rapid convince do loops. We really believe in doing things on a sprint basis, either maybe a 10 to 12 week sprint. I know that's different from an agile sprint, but a short amount of time. And the reason for that is it tells the team, here's what we're expecting from you in that specific amount of time. And we like to be really prescriptive in there and say, here's what we expect, number of experiments, number of our experiment participants, for example. And then at the end, there's an immovable report out where you're going to make a pivot, persevere, kill recommendation to your senior leader. And that senior leader has also been trained on how to interpret that recommendation based on evidence. And that sponsor report out, that senior leadership report out, is immovable. Nobody gets to say, hey, we're not ready, or we need more time. It's just it's a check at that 12-week period, for example. How far have you come? What have you learned? And what do you know? That's a really powerful way to both find early adopter teams and then run those rapid convince do loops to produce some of the proof points we've talked about. Anything to add there, Jonathan? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you captured it. I think one of the challenges always is how do you socialize? How do you communicate in a way that is going to drive people to put their hands up, right? So often we want to do kind of a limited socialization. We're finding people who we know are early adopters. We're making sure they're present in that session, right? We don't want to expose ourselves to the idea that we're going to say, who wants to start doing this, and no one puts their hand up. So there's some people who are going to be voluntold, right? Because they're strategically important. But we definitely want to have people who are identifying this as a problem, and we want to make sure that people know there's an opportunity for them to take part or to hold off, right?
Yeah, great.
Another important tactic, so we talked a little bit about dashboards, we mentioned metrics and communication. One of the challenges with using metrics is that sometimes we can kind of overcomplicate the dynamic of data, right? And so given that we're early in the journey when we're talking about here getting these fast wins, we want to make sure that we're focusing in on something that's really simple and has a good opportunity to move in the direction we want it to. So just as an example, one of the organizations we work with, we're tracking interactions with customers, right? And that's such a powerful number in their organization because traditionally they've done a really poor job at actually speaking to their customers. So by deploying Lean Startup, by instilling in product teams the dynamics that the way that they make progress is by learning from customers. It's a really easy metric to understand. Did you speak to the customer and learn from them? Did you not? Right? The number is very straightforward. We can drive it forward through the best practices. So it's a really powerful way of communicating, hey, we're starting to speak to customers at a really high volume. Changes are happening here. So find those really simple find a way to communicate them.
Good stuff. I guess I'll cover the next one here. So moving quickly through short sprints to deliver on high impact milestones. This is related to the first bullet point, but I'll elaborate on making sure that teams know what quickly means. So in that sprint, let's say 10 to 12 weeks, how many experiments, how many customers should be involved in interviews and experiments to say, this is what good looks like. We're expecting you to meet this criteria. And then also what that does is for the senior leaders that are sponsoring that team, then the senior leader has a responsibility to the team to open up doors to provide access to those customers, for example. And there's a great question in the Q&A that's related to that, and we'll cover that here at the end. But making sure the team knows what's the velocity at which we're expected to work in these short sprints. I think the other thing is the simple set of milestones. So the milestones that we would recommend are kind of following a basic order of operations, like what problem are you trying to solve? Do you have traction with your solution? Do you have a growth strategy that makes sense? And then the capstone is all the pieces of your business model. Are those in place so that you have a validated business plan that you know and have more confidence that you can go all in and fully invest in that in order to go forth and conquer in the market, right? So defining those high impact milestones up front, really lightweight, getting just getting the basics in place before you get too complicated on the milestones. And then the other thing is just back to those sprints. I'll say it again, making sure that the teams know that at the end of them, there is a recommendation on whether to pivot, persevere, or kill that specific initiative. And then the executive's job is to interpret that data and that recommendation and make a decision whether or not they agree with the team. So that's a short and kind of powerful way of moving through those milestones quickly.
Building on that idea of making decisions quickly, there's a tendency in large organizations to think that decision making and governance needs to be really bureaucratic and takes a lot of energy. One of the things that we really want to push for to get these quick wins is to dial back as much as possible on the bureaucracy, right? So if there's an existing governing body that we could leverage, let's take advantage of that before we start creating a new meeting and new meeting dynamic. If there's a way that we can find a small group of leaders who are capable of A, getting on the calendar on a regular basis, B, making decisions, we want to take advantage of that. So the message here is find ways, because that's just going to slow down the opportunity for those wins. And that slowness, that friction, that's going to get in the way of the momentum. I'll throw one more in here as we're wrapping up before we get to the Q&A. So put in your questions in the Q&A panel on Zoom. Story currency. So this is a notion that comes a little bit out of Donald Miller and story brand. It comes out of the idea of really understanding that in order to gain momentum, people need to hear references from inside their organization, right? So the laggards, the mainstream on that adoption curve, one of the reasons why they're a little bit reluctant to get involved is because they're generally saying, oh, well, that's really interesting and it's nice, but that's never going to work here. We've got some of our special snowflake dynamics about regulation or our customers or other reasons for saying no, for maintaining the status quo. And as soon as you can generate video testimonials, I saw that one pop up in the last section, you've got papers written, short blogs, you've got community saying, we've done this, we've run into some challenges, we had some early successes, some failures, this is what worked, what didn't work. That's such a powerful currency for communicating to the rest of the organization. This can work here, and therefore gives you a really good chance of taking advantage of the momentum that you established. So capture those stories, package them up as simply as possible, and distribute them as widely as possible. Cool. All right. Let's see if we've got any time for some questions here.
So we do. We do. This is a really good one, and I'm glad somebody asked it because it comes up a lot. And so the question is, I just started to work for a massive company that wants to use Lean Startup for innovation work. I'm finding that access to customers who we need to talk to is incredibly controlled. And right now we have to work through a third-party distributor, presumably to get access to those customers. It's severely limiting the quantity of customers we can speak with and prolonging the time period to gaining insights that are actionable. Has anyone else had to contend with this, and how did you find a way to get things done? I want to get some wins, but it feels like it may be hard. So I'll start that answer, and then I'll have Jonathan and Marissa can chime in. So yes, other people have had to contend with that. That's a very common theme that we've seen across a lot of people that are trying to implement Lean Startup. And so I would say there are kind of three ways that you can hack that. And then there's three ways that immediately come to mind for me. Number one is Lean Startup as a system, as we've talked about in a lot of our previous webinars and some of the articles that are in our website. And so any team that's working in a Lean Startup way has a sponsor or an executive whose job it is to unlock doors for that team. And so making sure that your senior executive knows that you can't get your work done unless you get some of those blockers out of the way to actually get access to customers is really important. So that's one. That's their job. They're not just a figurehead. They have a job to do in the Lean Startup system. Number two is there are a lot of organizations out there where you can just buy customer lists, and you can go around sort of the internal bureaucracy. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of non-customers out there. So whoever asked this question, I know you work for a massive company. I'm assuming you've got 20% market share, 30% market share, or something as high as that. That means that 70 to 80% of the market aren't your customers and are not controlled by a third-party distributor. And so going out and talking to non-customers who have the same problems as your customers but aren't guarded by an account manager is also a really powerful way of getting access to those types of people you want to talk to. So those are my top three. Any other thoughts, Jonathan, Marissa, on that?
So I'll just chime in that I think often the definition of who is a customer gets a little bit distorted. So I love Ben's comment. The customers who you need to speak to are not necessarily your current customers, but they could also be people who are key stakeholders in the customer journey that are not necessarily the purchasers of the product or service that you're going after, right? And so they may often be less controlled because they're not the people who are interacting with the sales team, but they're super powerful as for providing insight into what it is that we're trying to learn. So make sure that you don't laser focus just in on the current definition of customers.
Yep, good.
I would second that as well. I mean, there's a lot of different roles in the process of talking to customers that you can experiment with. There's the end users, there's decision makers. So kind of just don't look at one, but look at the broad spectrum of who is touched by this product and speak with as many as you can.
That's really powerful. And oftentimes we're so desperate to talk to customers in a B2B environment, for example, that we end up getting anybody that we can talk to at that customer, even if they're the wrong person to talk to at that company. And so really being laser focused on who we need to talk to. And the other thing is maybe those people at the specific role that you're targeting as a customer, they're not covered by an account manager, and an account manager wouldn't actually care if you're going to talk to that customer. There's another question here that I think is a great one. It's, as a consulting firm embracing the Lean Startup principles in their practice, would the quick win tactics also work to sell a transformation project? Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, it's the same thing. It's how do you affect change, right? And so going back to Fruit Inc. and Veggie Inc., the temptation is to say, we want to implement Lean Startup and let's go and be Fruit Inc. and sell the whole adoption curve that we're going to do this transformation project. that tends to not work. And also, I hate to say it, that's how a lot of internal transformation projects tend to work in big companies. And it's one of the reasons that oftentimes those adoption rates aren't as high as the internal transformation team would like to see. So this is a universal concept of how to affect change, that convince do loop, and earning your way up the adoption curve. It takes longer. Well, it seems like it takes longer, but it's actually the shortest path because it works. And so and again, that's back to the convince do and the adoption curve. So the answer is yes. That's how to sell a transformation project. Whether you're a consultant inside a company or outside a company, it's an effective way. Okay, I think we have 2 minutes left. Maybe we should wrap things up unless there's any other questions here. I know everybody's always going from everybody's always going from meeting to meeting, so we'll give everyone a couple minutes to get a cup of coffee. So thank you so much. Next steps. We have a lot of additional resources on our website, leanstartup.co. So our webinars, articles, books, many of you have downloaded our new ebook, which is available on our website. And also, if you're interested in scheduling just a no pressure discovery call with us, go ahead and email us on info@leanstartup.co or hit the QR code there. And we'd be happy to just talk about these concepts or how to implement them in a no pressure environment. So thanks for attending today, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.